Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for all of you who are joining me today. This is a pre-recorded teaching that we are giving. And this is for this day, Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Thank you for being with us. And I'm going to be away. That's why I'm not doing it live. But I wanted to do it and do the effort to not to miss this parasha, because this parasha, this Torah teaching, this Torah portion is very important. Every Torah portion is very, very important for all of us to understand that the Creator is giving us the opportunity to understand knowledge through this Torah. Each one of us has the capability to understand the Torah that Yahweh has given us. It's amazing, because without the Torah, we're pretty much we pretty much don't have anything. So Torah is everything to us. Torah, it's life living every single day, and that's what it's all about, to understand the meaning of life through understanding Yahweh and His ordained ordinances. So today's it's Parashat Tetzawed. Tetzawed means you should command. This very important parashat is rather important, because here we're going to understand a lot of concepts in the Hebrew mind. And once again, it is very important for us to understand that every Torah portion that we study is not just to study, it's to understand what the Creator wants from all of us, as far as understanding life, understanding how should we see things. It could be in our families, it could be in our jobs, it could be in anything. Once you understand Torah, you understand how to deal with the situation. So this Torah portion is rather important as well. Remember, everything that was written in the Tanakh, it is a foreshadow of the things to come, even till today, 2017. So this is very, very important indeed. Now, going back to, I wanted to say thank you for all of you, our viewers, and those who are following us. Thank you once again. All the information that we give, it is free of charge. We don't charge a cent, because that's the way it's supposed to be. Torah is for all of us. We don't charge. We don't concentrate on gaining anything, but to share the information that Yahweh has given us through the Torah, and that's what it's all about. So thank you once again, and for all of you who are watching us in Africa, Sam. Sakaya in Texas, Kiros in Puerto Rico, and all those brothers and sisters that are around the world that are watching us. Thank you once again, and shalom to all of you. And let's get started. Now, Tetzawed, Parashat Tetzawed, is picking up from last Parashat, which is Terumah, which is the contribution. Remember, the Creator asked Moshe to ask all our forefathers, the people of Israel, to give a contribution of whatever they had. And he actually say, what we need is gold, silver, we need clothing, as far as fabrics and so forth, so we can make this Mishkan. This Mishkan was the tent of the meeting, where Yahweh was going to dwell, his kabod, his esteem was going to appear there in the midst of our forefathers. And there is a great meaning to all of us, because we found out later in that parashat that Yahweh is telling us that the Mishkan, it is a foreshadow of all of us. Our bodies are the Mishkan. The Mishkan is basically the Beit HaMikdash, the temple of Yahweh. And it's very important, because it was a foreshadow since the beginning of time, that the Mishkan is our bodies, where Yahweh dwells. Or the Ruach of Yahweh, the Ruach HaKodesh, the set-apart spirit of Yahweh, dwells within us. So that is very important for understand in the Torah. Now, going back to this parashat, you should command, that's what Tetzawed means. And this parashat picks up from last parashat. And here, before we start, in today's parashat, it's in the 5th month and the 15th day on the 5969 of the Torah calendar. And to make it more efficient, here we can see the the 5th month of the Torah calendar, and we can see where you see parentheses here, where you see the Tetzawed, which is the parasha for today's Torah portion. So here we see the instruments that Yahweh for seeing, Moshe to understand that this is what he needed to be duplicate. But remember that he firstly he saw the original one before he made the replica. He first saw it. Yahweh said, you should make it as you saw it in the mountain. So he saw it first, and he needed to make a replica of what he saw, the original one, in the Shammai in heavens. So when the mountain, remember that Yahweh contracted the heavens and earth, and when he contracted the heaven and earth, that's why Yahweh showed him a lot of things, a lot of revelation, the things that needed to be done. And the Mishkan, or the tent of dwelling, was one of them. And all these utensils and all these tools that needed to make it work, he saw first the original first before he even made the replica of that. So here we see a lot of instruments, a lot of tools that needed to be done, and we saw them last parashat. So here we see that there needed to be collected some gold and silver and things of that nature, so we can make the Mishkan, the tent of the dwelling, and all these utensils around there. The measurement that this Mishkan needed to have was very precise in every single angle, how the Creator set that, the way it needs to be done, very perfect. One of these things that they needed to have, it was the Techilet. The Techilet is the blue cord. Remember, the Techilet was basically what we have as far as the Talit. The Talit has the Techelet, which is the blue cord. And this fabric was one of them, was one of the fabrics that was that the Mishkan, or the tent of the dwelling, needed to have. And that's very important because it tells us that the Torah is basically entwined in every little thing, how the Creator makes every single thing about the creation. And every creation has His command. Every creation has His ordained. Yahweh makes every little thing very precise. So He has to have His command, is ordained. Same thing with the Torah. Torah has His 613 mitzvot, and these mitzvot, these commands, has His reason for it. So everything can be the equilibrium that every little thing has to have it's perfect, the way the Creator intended to. So this was one of them, and we can see how the Techele is made today out of something that is it's a coloring that is entwined into the when they dye the quartz, the tzitzit, we can see how they dye it in Jerusalem, and that's how it was made. In the Mishkan inside, you need to have not only the Techelet, you need to have scarlet, and it needs to be precise the way that Yahweh asked Moshe to make it for. So every little thing has its things that need to have, and the way it needed to be placed in the Mishkan. It wasn't just randomly placed anywhere. It needed to be in a certain way, in a certain form, pointing in a certain direction, and every direction has its meaning. So that's very important. We know over about the altar, the Mizbeach, or the Korban, which is the offering, the burnt offering and so forth. We understood in the last parasha what that meant, and we understood also about the washing of cleansing, the purification, and we understand not just as the Holocaust, which is the burnt incense, but also we meant that meant also the repentance. When we do teshuvah, when we turn around of our old sins, we make a judgment call, and that's what the Creator made to all of us. The same thing with our bodies, our mind and soul. We cleanse ourselves, we purify through the Tevilah. Tevilah, it was what is called the immersion. When we do immersion, we make a covenant with the Creator, and also, remember, all these things were made out of bronze. Bronze in the scriptures is judgment. We take a judgment at the same time we make a vow to Yahweh, because remember, these things are not just randomly, just okay. We don't do it out of pure, I should say, emotions, because we don't do things by emotions. We do because we understand it here in our minds. That's the way it's supposed to be. We make sense of things. We just don't randomly say, you know what, like in the nations, like in the Christian churches, they just made things out of pure emotions, and because they see another person doing it, they want to do it too, and then they change their minds. In the scriptures, in the Torah, Yahweh has to be very precise when it comes to understanding that these things are and will be out of our Creator is giving us the understanding how we can make our minds based upon the things that make sense, which Torah makes sense for all of us. Not a lot of people understand that, but that's the way it is. And the immersion is one of them. Immersion is a way of understanding and purify our souls and our bodies. Now, we went inside into the set apart, which is the Kadosh place. The Kadosh place, it's where they have three things. They have the menorah, which is what we are looking at here, and the menorah is basically the light, the lighting of the word. Remember that we were outside in the court. Outside in the court is where that's the basic stuff, that's the basic elements. This is where a lot of people, what you see outside here in the outer courtyard, that's why a lot of people get stuck. We don't want to be stuck there, as we talked in the last parashat. We don't want to just, okay, I did the immersion, I repented, and everything is fine. And they just cross their arms and, everything's shalom, and that's it. It doesn't work that way. We need to go forward as the way we see it here. You are in the outer court. You want to go inside where the set apart is. Where is the set apart? Inside. That's where you want to be. In the set apart place, that's where the three things were there. There was the menorah, okay? That was the incense, and there was the bread, the presence, the set apart place was the bread of the presence. And three things are very important, because here we see that Yahweh is giving us the enlightenment of the word. That's why you realize that you were wrong. When you study the Torah, when you study that, all the things that you've been taught for many, many years, including your family, you've been dragging all these traditions of men into paganism, traditionalism, and all these things, and you realize that you were totally wrong. And this is by the light of the Torah. The menorah is basically the Torah itself that enlightens you, enlightens your path while you walk. Not only that, also the incense is also where you want to be, which is the prayers of the Kadoshim, the set apart people. That's where you do your prayers. That's where you understanding. You communicate with the Creator as the kid communicates with the Father, as a child communicates with the Father. So are the children of Yahweh. We communicate with our Kadosh Baruch Hu, with Yahweh Sebaot, and that's how you communicate with Him through the incense. That's a aroma that yields all the way to His Shemayim, to the heavens. So not only that, you also need to eat. You need to eat of the bread of Yahweh, the bread of the Torah. It was to sustain you while you walk. You need the light, you need the enlightenment, but you need to study it. You need to study it so you can understand it. If you don't study Torah, how are you going to understand it? A lot of you, I don't understand how a lot of people say that. I understand, I do believe, but they don't study the Torah. Okay, one thing is reading, one thing is studying. You need to study the Torah. It's not just reading. It's not just reading a story that it took place a long time ago. No, we are studying the Torah because you understand that Yahweh is speaking to you and me and to everybody else who are studying the Torah, and you understand it. You understand it through the Ruach HaKodesh, through the set apart of the Spirit of Yahweh. That's how you understand all these things, because you are constantly eating of this bread, this bread of life, which is the Torah. So we understand all these things are very important. And now we come to the final place, which is this most set apart place where the Ark of the Covenant was. And we understood that the Ark of the Covenant is basically the mirror to you when you see the Torah and you see the reflection, or same way as you saw the Torah is reflecting to you, as when you look at yourself in the mirror, you say, you know what, I need to make a change here. I need to comb it like this. I think you make arrangements, you make adjustments within your life. All of us, we need to make adjustments how your life needs to be ordained. If your life is in disorder, don't you think that we need to make an adjustment within your life? We need to take these things. These traditions don't really, it really shock. It contradicts in what Yahweh says. So you need to make a change, and these changes goes through how you see yourself. Yahweh said to all of us, you need to be kadosh. You need to be set apart as I am. Okay. Mashiach says the same thing in Shem Tov Matithiyah chapter 5. He said, you need to be kadosh as my Father is kadosh. Same thing. We need to set apart ourselves. And the only way to need to do that is through all the things that we just saw a minute ago. You need to eat of the bread. You need to enlighten in the menorah. You need to pray with the incense. All these things are very advanced, because we were in the courtyard, remember? We don't want to be stuck in there. We need to go forward here. We need to go forward right here, so we can see ourselves in a mirror, and we need to make a change. We need to make a change to get things better. Once you make things better, then you understand, you realize the meaning of life. The meaning of life is not just, when I ask a lot of people, what do you do for a living? Who are you? I said, who are you? And a lot of people say, well, I am a doctor, I'm a janitor, I work as a manager, and blah, blah, blah. They give me a lot of things, I didn't ask, what do you do for a living? I say, who are you as a person? It is very hard a lot of people, it's very hard to explain themselves, who are they as a person? We can talk about movies, we can talk about entertainment, we can talk about gossiping, we can talk about our families, we can talk about everything. It comes easy from out of our mouth. But when it comes to talking about your inner selves, it's so hard to explain ourselves. And that's because we don't understand ourselves. We don't understand ourselves as a person. So in order for us to understand as a person, we need to study the Torah, so you can understand yourself as a person. And once you do that, it comes easily. And the only way to do that is through learning, through seeing ourselves in the Torah as a mirror. That will be the only way for us to do so. So moving forward, here in the same Ark of the Covenant, we saw that the Ark of the Covenant had a lot of things, a lot of details within it. We said that it had the cherubim. The cherubim were two angels, one in each side. Underneath was the poles, right? That they hold it. You couldn't just grab it. You need to have the poles, because you could die if you don't grab it by the poles. And the ark itself was basically a box, okay, and very specific measurements. In each side was the same size. And the crown, which was around it, was sort of like a crown. And finally was the mercy seat. Now all this, if you in the top of it was like, this one is the mercy seat, what is called the lid, the lid covering, the head covering, that was the head covering. That it means something very important. This is the box, this is the Ark of the Covenant. But let's look at what Shemot or Exodus said, chapter 30, verse 6 of Shemot or Exodus. And you should put it before the veil, which is besides the ark of the testimony, in front of the kaporet. Kaporet in Hebrew means mercy seat or the head covering, which is over the testimony, there where I meet you. You see that? In the head covering, which the kaporet, which is what is translated as a mercy seat. If you notice that the mercy seat looks sort of like a throne. It looks sort of like a throne. Let's go into the book of Romans. Now, let's look at what the word kaporet means. And I was looking at the Septuagint version of what that means in Greek. And it's amazingly because it tells you the same number of the Septuagint from the Tanakh on Exodus. It tells you the number on Greek. So let's look at what the Brit Hadashah says in the letters of Shaul in Romans chapter 3 verse 25, when it says, whom Yahweh set forth as, look at what it says, the word propitiation is the same word as kaporet. That means a head covering. Through faith in his blood, as a demonstration of the righteousness through the remission of our sins that are past in the foreknowledge of Yahweh. Do you see that? Once again, whom Yahweh set forth as kaporet. Kaporet means covering. Why? Because remember that in the covering that this kaporet, this mercy seat had, that's where the Kohen Gadol came and is sprinkled with blood 7 times. 7 times is sprinkled on Yom HaKippurim, in the Day of the Atonement. So on that day, he sprinkled 7 times for the whole people of Israel, our forefathers. So here we can see that the covering is basically, now we understand what the covering means. Let's look at another one. 1st of John 2:2, or Yochanan 2:2, 1st of Yochanan 2:2. And he is the kaporet, who? The Mashiach. He is the kaporet, or the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for the sins of the whole world. That means that the whole Israel is around the world, scattered among the nations. See that? So very important that the kaporet, or the propitiation, or aka the mercy seat, or the head covering, it meant the Mashiach. The Mashiach is the kaporet. Now, 1st of John, or Yochanan, 1st of Yochanan 4:10. For this is the love, now we love Yahweh, he loved us, and he sent his Son to be the propitiation, or kaporet, for our sins. You see that? Another verse that is telling us that Mashiach Yahushua is the kaporet from the Torah. Ezekiel 18:4, or Ezekiel 18:4. Yahweh says that all souls that sin, he shall die. All souls that sin, he shall die. Why? Because all souls belongs to Yahweh Sabaoth. Vayikra, or Leviticus 17:1, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. You see that? In other words, Yahweh says that the life of the flesh, it is in the blood. And because of, without any sacrifice, without any korban, any offering, there will be no remissions of sins. So it needed to be some blood before anything was redeemed. So that's why Yahweh says, for the life is in the blood. Without the blood, there is no life. And it's very, I work in the laboratory, and I work in the hospital, and it's very important if the person needs transfusion of blood. It doesn't need it. If there is no blood transfusion, the person might die. It is just, life is in the blood. So here we go to the next level. In this Torah portion, we are looking at the garments that the Kohen Gadol, or the high priest, needed to have. These these garments were not just randomly made. It needed to have certain measurements. It needs to have certain details. How Yahweh said you need to make it the way I'm telling you to be made. So he's telling us through the Torah. He's telling us through the Torah that every single detail that these garments needed to have. Now, let's go into Exodus or Shemot 28 verse 4. These are the garments that thou shalt make: a breastplate, a breastpiece, an ephod, a robe, a coat of shepherd's work, a turban, a sash belt, and should make it set apart garments for Aharon, your brother, and his sons to serve me as a Kohanim. Kohanim means priest. Now, once again, these are the set apart garments, or the Kadosh garments, that Moshe needed to tell his brother Aharon to make for all his sons. Remember that they were Levites, Levines. So they needed to wear these very set apart garments for them to serve Yahweh when they went inside the Mishkan. Now let me just tell you one thing. It's a perspective so you understand what I'm talking about. When an astronaut goes into outer space, first he needs to practice, he needs to rehearse everything that needed to be done in outer space. They need to go underwater, they need to simulate the simulation that needs to have, just like they were in outer space. They need to practice this, they need to rehearse this, they need to rehearse the gravity, they need to do a lot of things before they go into outer space. But before all that, they also need to wear the astronaut's suit. Without the astronaut suit, they cannot go out of space, because if they take off the helmet for an instance, I mean, they die. I mean, it's just, common sense. Same thing as the garments. Yahweh said that these garments, they needed to be worn, they needed to wash their flesh, they needed to do tevilah, they need to do all these things, but also they need to have these garments. Without the garments, they could not go inside. So this is very important, that these things needed to be made and also to wear. Now let's go to Ephesians, because here we're going to make a comparison. We're going to compare how Shaul, and to be honest with you, I never understood the words of Shaul when he talks about the armor of Yahweh. You know, how the armor of Yahweh. And I always thought to myself, oh, maybe he's talking about the Romans. And I thought to myself, okay, I know the Romans were living around the 1st century. I know that. Very much influence. But how could Shaul be talking about a Roman soldier comparing to, on the Torah? It doesn't make any sense. Then I understood that he was not talking about a Roman, what do you call this? He's not talking about a Roman soldier. He never was. So we're going to understand exactly the mind of Shaul. And so let's start into Ephesians chapter 6, verse 11. And it says, put on the complete armor of Yahweh for you to have the power to stand against the schemes of Satan, because we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against, and he goes to say, principalities, against authorities, against the world rulers of darkness of this age, and against the spiritual matters of the wickedness in the heavenly leaves. Now, all these things, every single thing that he mentions there, are different from one another. And we have to understand this, that we lived in the 1st century. We understand that the technology is very much in advance. Wickedness is very much, grows so much. Every single day that goes by, it gets worse. We can see it in the news. We can see it in the world. We can see with people's mentalities that are going bananas. The wickedness and evil, it's increasing more and more. The worship of Satan is even increasing openly in open view, and they're not hiding anymore. And we can see it in TV, we can see it in the news, we can see it everywhere that you go. You can see a sign of Chazatan. So once again, we need to be put on the armor of Yahweh. And the way we have to understand to put the armor of Yahweh is to look upon in the Torah perspective, in the Hebrew perspective. If we don't do that, we won't be able to understand the words that Shaul speaks of. So we understand his mind. So let's start. Here you see that Shaul was not speaking of anything but Torah. And what he is implying here about the armor of Yahweh is basically the garments of the Kohanim. The garments of the Kohanim are basically the armor of Yahweh. Now we're going to look upon in the Torah perspective. Not the way you and I were taught many years ago in Sunday school when the pastor or whoever was teaching you in the pulpit on the Greek mentality. We're not there anymore. We're not in that school anymore. We are here in the Torah. We are here learning upon what Yahweh has given to Moshe, what Mashiach is revealing to us through the Torah. Remember, Moshe received the Torah, but the Mashiach, Yahushua, is the one who's giving the proper interpretation of the Torah. And that's what we have so much advantage of. So let's go start into the armor of Yahweh, which is the high priest garments. And let's go one by one. If you look up here where it says the ephod was basically the thing around the breastplate. Okay, the ephod was basically everything around the breastplate. If you see it right here in the middle, that's the breastplate where the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 stones were written on, and the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, this is very important indeed, because these things that you see on the right side were in the shoulders of the Kohanim, or the high priest. You see that these are two stones that were here. In the Torah, it says that they need to have 6 names of Israel in one side, and the other side of the shoulder need to have another 6 names of total 12 tribes. And this is what the Torah said that the Kohanim needed to have in each side, which is basically are telling you that our shoulders are carrying the names of all the tribes of Israel. We have the responsibility of each one of us have the responsibility of the 12 tribes of Israel. In other words, we represent Israel. Let me give an example. When anybody goes into, and ultimately we represent Yahweh Sevaot as well. When anybody goes into, for instance, an Olympics, and when they, let's say, they win the gold medal, I'm just saying, the gold medal, what did they say when they announce it? Such and such, this country, United States, won. They didn't mention, in the very beginning, they didn't mention the name of the person. They mentioned the name of the person later, but they say, who won? Was it United States? Who won? Russia? What? China? Who won? They say, oh, United States. Oh, okay, great. So they represent the whole nation, this person. All of us represent the nation of Israel. It is a great responsibility, but it's the truth. We ultimately represent Yahweh Sebaot. Yahweh Sebaot is the one we represent, but we represent Israel, the same as the Mashiach. And I can give you a lot of verses where he represents the whole nation of Israel. And Yeshayahu Isaiah talks about that. It talks about Mashiach representing Yaakov, and we can see a lot of examples on that regard. So moving on, we can see that if you notice here on his shoulder is the 2 stones. If you notice here on his shoulder are the 2 stones that needed to have, and there were the 6 names on each side of the children of Israel. Now we see here the 2 stones, very beautiful indeed, to be honest with you, because they were made out of pure gold. So this is very, very, beautiful garments. And if you notice here, the blue color is the techelet, which is what we're talking earlier, that this is the techelet. The techelet is the blue fabric that was made out of the dye from a sea creature that is refers after 2,000 years. Now let's go into the armor of Yahweh. The armor of Yahweh is not what we're looking at in the past. We thought that Shaul or Paul was talking about a Roman soldier. It is never, was never, and will never be the case. This is a no-no. What we are talking about here is the armor of Yahweh. This is the original armor of Yahweh, and we will look at upon next. Look what it says here, and so we can take off in this study. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 14 and on. Then stand firm, having girded your loins about with the truth, and having put on the breastplate of your righteousness, and the finger your feet with preparation of the good news of shalom. Above all, taking up the shield of faith, which you will be able to quench all the flaming darts of the evil one. And also put on the helmet of salvation, and take the sword of the Spirit, or the ruach of the Spirit, which is the word of Yahweh. Now here we see the armor of Yahweh to work. Where we will get into that, each one of them, and compare to the Kohanim, to the garments of the Kohanim, of the high priest, and we will fit it on accordingly to the Torah. So let's look upon this. Shemot, or Exodus 28 verse 39. And you should weave the tunic of branch linen, and you should make a mitre of branch linen, and you should make a girdle. A girdle was basically a belt that was strapped on in the, what you see here, the girdle. The Kohanim, or high priest, needed to have this belt, this girdle, and these needed to be worn around it. Now, very intriguing, because I was thinking to myself, I mean, even today, men, all of it, I mean, men, we need to, even women, they need to have a belt when they wear something. What happens if you take the belt off? Everything will fall off. Everything will be goggling, you know, everything will be loose. The belt is basically what holds everything. Once again, the belt is basically what holds everything. Remember this, and I remember there was one, it's a story about a great general, that he was very smart when he went to battles, and he studied their enemy, and he studied to the point where he went at nighttime, he sent spies at nighttime when they were asleep, the enemy, and they sneak into the camp, and the spies went inside, and with the knife he cut all the belt of every single soldier, so the next morning when they were ready to battle, they sound the alarm to woo, 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 woo. And then when head on to battle, the enemies were like trying to put the belt, and they couldn't put the belt on, so they were totally, I mean, unguarded, so they lose the battle. And this general knew that without the belt, there was no standing on. They couldn't defend themselves, because without the belt, you have to have something to have a security within your body, within yourself. The same thing with the belt. Here we see that the belt is the security of what holds everything. Let's look into what that means into the Torah. In Ephesians 6:14, then stand firm, having girded your loins with truth. Truth here is the belt. Without the belt, without the truth, there is no Torah. There is, without the emet, emet in Hebrew is truth. And without the emet, there is no Torah. What is the emet? Is the Mashiach. The Mashiach says, I am the truth, the life, and the bread. Without me, you're nothing. Without the Mashiach, if the Father would not send Mashiach, would not be standing here. Once again, if the Father, Yahweh Sabaoth, would not send his Son, the Mashiach, to redeem all of us, would not be standing here. The Mashiach is the Emet. The Mashiach is the truth. Without, even our Jewish brothers, they say in their writings that without the Mashiach, all the prophets wrote about the Mashiach. All the prophets, all the Tanakh were written about the Mashiach. And even they quote about this, which is very important. So this is something that we need to take upon a very important consideration on the Torah. The Torah, the belt of the Torah is the truth. Without the truth, there is no Torah. Let's look into other versions. Yeshayahu or Isaiah 11:5, and the righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins. Do you see that? And the faithfulness of the girdle of his loins. Without this, truth is righteousness. Remember that. Faithfulness is righteousness. If you stick with that, if your belt is sticking to what's holding the whole garment, nobody's going to move you. That's how the Yahweh is. Now let's go into the next one. The breastplate, or what is called in Hebrew the Chosem. Chosem is the breastplate. The breastplate was what was holding right in front of us. Let's look into Shemot or Exodus 28 verse 5. And you should make the breastplate or the Chosem of judgment with a skilled work, like the work of the ephod. You should make it. What we saw earlier. Gold, blue, purple, crimson, bleached, twine, linen, they should make it. All this garment needs to have all these utensils, these linens, but above all, it needs to have the breastplate of judgment, the Chosem. Now this breastplate, let's go into what Yeshayahu or Isaiah says, 59:7. And he put on his righteousness as a breastplate. You see that? And he put on his righteousness as a breastplate. Why? Because here, not here in the chest, it was hold everything. What basically what protects everything. It protects us from our hearts and our inner intestines and everything. It's basically all the vital organs. It protects everything. I remember a verse in Proverbs and also Psalms where it says, above everything, my son, you should guard your heart. Above everything, you should guard your heart. Here in our breast, in our chest, is basically when you put on the breastplate or any shield here, you basically covering your inner vital organs. One of them is the heart. So this is very important. And righteousness is basically one of them. One of them that is basically, it's basically at the same time we know that the judgment that Yahweh put on us, we make a judgment call. We make a judgment within ourselves. We make a judgment if it is or not. In the Torah, we need to decide what we want. We need to decide what makes sense in the Torah. What not doesn't make any sense. We need to make a sense of things, and this is based upon Yahweh's Torah. Without this, we're nothing. The word mishpach, which judgment is decisions, destruction, injustice, judgment, matter of justice. You see that? All this has to do with mishpach. That's the word judgment. We need to make a judgment call. We need to decide what we want. Do you want to follow Torah or you don't want to follow Torah? Within our hearts is the decision that we make. Do you want to follow Yahweh or you want to follow all the traditions of men, all the paganism that they follow? You need to make a judgment call. Remember, Yahweh said, in that day, I won't judge you. The word would judge you. We need to make a judgment call. And that's what it's all about. Now this, as you can see, was the Chosem, was the breastplate. And the breastplate had a lot of things. Well, it had 12 stones. About the 12 stones were, if you can see here, the 12 stones were lining up the way Yahweh told Moshe to make it. And if you, not only that, but as you see in each side there are 2 stones. Those are the Urim and Tumim. The Urim and Tumim were the judgment that they needed to, the decision that Yahweh needed to tell them what needed to be done. Moshe didn't need that because he spoke to Yahweh almost face to face. He didn't need that. But all the Kohanim, even David, needed to have this. So that's very important that we need to keep that in mind. Vayikra, or Leviticus 8:8, and he put on the breastplate on him, and he put a Urim and the Thummim in the breastplate. And this is basically this. The Urim and Thummim is here on each side of the breastplate. And this was very, very important to have. And if you can see here, the Kohen here, the priest, is putting on the breastplate to David. And remember that if you go in the first of Kings and the second of Kings, where the Tanakh is telling us that David or David was with making an alliance with the Philistines. At that time, Shaul was persecuting him. King Shaul was persecuting him because he wanted dead. So he went and find a refugee make an alliance with the Philistines. So he made some kind of refugee there. And when he came to fight with Shaul, he says, I will catch up with you later. But he didn't want to go there. He didn't want to fight against his own people. So he went and he stood in his own place where the Philistines gave him. But he found himself in some kind of situation, judgment. He needed to find an answer to Yahweh, because at that time they were the Amalekites. He heard that the Amalekites, on his people that he had as a refugee that he was living on, they were attacked. So the Amalekites were in one hand, he needed to go on the other hand. So he needed him to make a judgment call. So the Kohen put the breastplate on David to ask Yahweh. He was the only one who was able to, because he was the Kohen or the priest that needed to have this. So here he went and asked Yahweh to ask him, what do you want me to do? So Yahweh told him what he needed to be done, and he said, don't go to fight with Shaul. Stay with the Amalekites and fight with them. And that's what he did. So here he was the only one that he wore the breastplate. Moving on, next we see the feet. The feet are very important to have. Of course, we all have 2 feet. And Shemot, or Exodus 3:5, and he said, do not come near here. Pull off your sandals from your feet, for the place in which we are standing, it is kadosh ground. It is a set apart ground. Same thing. We have to understand that when we are in the presence of Yahweh, we need to take all your feet. The feet. What is the feet or the shoes bring, or the sandals? Dust. The dust signifies basically the impurities of the outside. All the impurities, all the things outside, you need to leave them outside. You need to have clean heart when you come into Yahweh's presence. And the same thing with us. When we come to Yahweh's presence, we need to take off your feet, literally speaking. And we need to have, in the presence of Yahweh, clean heart as well, which is very important as well. So let's go into what that means in the scriptures. Ephesians 6:15, be ready with the good news of peace, of shalom, as shoes in your feet. Do you see that? The good news, or besorah in Hebrew, are as a shoes on your feet. Why? Because when you walk into a place, when you walk to this place, you bring something. You're supposed to bring something. In this case, you're supposed to bring a besorah. The besorah in Hebrew means the good news, the Torah, in other words, aka your Torah. So the Torah of Yahweh needs to bring to all the places. Ishayahu, or Isaiah 52 verse 7, How beautiful in the mountains are the feet in which are proclaiming the Besorah. The Besorah in Hebrew is good news. Making shalom heard, bearing Besorah or good news, making heard salvation, saying to Zion, your Almighty reigns, your Almighty lives. So here we can see a foreshadow of the things to come. It was written already of Mashiach. It was written already of Yochanan, John, and also it is written about all of us to bring this Besorah, this good news. 61 verse 1, speaking of the Mashiach, Yahushua, the Ruach of Yahweh and Master Yahweh is on me, because Yahweh has anointed me to preach the Besorah, the good news. To the meek, He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim the liberty to captives, and to recover the sight to the blind, and complete opening to the bound ones. Here it is written about the Mashiach that they needed to be done. You need to bring this Besorah. Now it is our turn. We are following His footsteps. We need to bring the Besorah, the good news of the Torah, to all those who ignore Torah. And that's what it's all about. Romans 10:13. For everyone who calls on the name of Yahweh shall be saved. How they call on Him who they have not believed, and how they believe on Him on whom they have not heard, and how they heard without one who proclaiming. These are very important questions. How are they going to believe if we have not talked about that? How are they going to proclaim if they never heard of it? I mean, it is all about common sense. You and I have the responsibility to understand Torah, to learn of the teachings of Torah, and once you understand it, once you digest the Torah, the understanding, you apply the Torah. When you apply the Torah, we apply all the things that we've been talking about, then you share it. They share the things that you have learned for those who are in darkness. And that's what it's all about, because all of us went through that. All of us have gone through that or are going through that. So we need to pass on this same pattern as well. So this is very important. 10:15 of Romans, and how they should proclaim if they not sent. Do you see that? And as if they been written in Yeshayahu, how pleasant are the feet on those who bring the Besorah, or the good news of Shalom, who brings the Besorah, or the news of the good. So here we've seen good things to come. All of us are following Yeshua's path. We are bringing Shalom, and the only Shalom that we're supposed to bring is through the Torah. The Torah, this Besorah, or the good news. Very, very important for all of us. Romans 10:16. However, not all obey the Besorah, or the good news. For Yeshayahu, Isaiah says, Yahweh, who has believed our report, who has believed our sayings. And it's very important. It is our responsibility to either whether or not they heard and believe, but that's our responsibility to say anyways. Our responsibility to say anyways. Don't just jump in conclusion, say, well, they're not going to believe, don't worry, why should I even say it? No, you need to say something. You need to proclaim this good news, this Besorah, the Torah, the truth Mashiach of the scriptures. We need to do so because it is a responsibility. Once your responsibility, as Shaul says, dust your feet, because you have no more part of it. You're off the hook, in other words. So, which is, you already done your part. The word basar or Besorah means fresh, to announce, gladness, messenger, preach, publish, bear, bring, carry, preach, good, tell, tidings. This is what the good tidings or the Besorah means, the good news. Now let's go on to the next one, which is the Ketoret. The Ketoret is the incense. Let's find out what the Ketoret is. Shemot, or Exodus 30 verse 1. A place for burning incense. This is what the Kohen or the high priest needed to bring. And let's go into Ephesians chapter 6, verse 18. Praying at all times with all prayers and supplications in the Spirit, in the Ruach, watching in all perseverance and supplication for all the set apart ones. In other words, it's not one prayer is not enough. We need to pray at all times. Just as Kohen Gadol or Kohanim needed to do it every single day, we need to do the same thing. We need to pray all times. Very important. Without this, is like without water. Revelation 8:3. And another cherub came and stood on the altar or mizbeach, having a golden censer, and many types of incense were given to him, that he shall give them with the prayers of all the kedoshim in the golden mizbeach or altar before the throne. So here we understand now that the incense or the ketoret, it is basically the prayers of the kedoshim or the set apart ones, all of us. We need to make these prayers as an incense, as a fragrance that yields to Yahweh. Psalms Tehillim 141:2. Let my prayer be established before you as incense, in the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice. Once again, we see another verse where Yahweh says the incense is the prayers that we ought to do all the time. And David is doing so as the way he's supposed to. Look at what David said. Very important. Establish my before you as an incense, my prayers. This is very important. Now let's go into what the next guard is supposed to be within our armor. Ephesians 6:16, above all taking up the shield of faith, which you will be able to quench all the flaming darts of the evil one. What is the shield of faith? Well, let's find out. 59:17 of Yeshayahu Isaiah, he put on the garments of vengeance for clothing, and then wrapped himself with the ardor as mantle. What is the shield of faith? Is basically the talit. The talit is basically what keeps us safe within our homes, within ourselves, within our families. Every place we go to, we need to have our protection. When we do our prayers, we get into this sukkah, this tent of dwelling. This is mini sukkah. This is a mini sukkah where you get in secret with your Father, which are in heaven, Yahweh Sabaoth. This is the shield that you're supposed to have. This is the shield that we ought to have. Without the shield, there's no covering. Let's go into another one. Look at what it says here, 15 verse 1 of Bereshit or Genesis. After these things, the word of Yahweh came to Abraham in a vision, saying, do not fear, Abram. I am shield to you. I am your shield. Yahweh is our shield. Yahweh is our protection. Yahweh is our authority. I didn't bring the verse because I forgot, but I know there is a verse in Matthew chapter 4, or Shem Tov Matthew chapter 4 Hebrew. Read it please. When Mashiach went into the desert to pray and fast, remember the Hebrews pray and fast. When you pray, what do? You cover yourself when you do your prayers. Chazatan in the Shem Tov in Hebrew says, I will give you all the kingdoms of the earth if you only take off your covering. If you only take off your covering. What was the covering meant in the Torah? It means the shield. It means the protection. It means the authority that he had from the Father Yahweh. So he wanted to take off that shield from the Mashiach, but of course he didn't. So we know that never happened. Job 29:14, I put on righteousness and it clothed me. The judgment was like a robe in a diadem. Here we can see that the righteousness is a cloth me. Everything that we do, it has its meaning. The talit is our shield. It's a judgment at the same time, because we are putting a judgment within ourselves when we do these things. Remember that. It's always the same thing. It's always yield to something else. Let's go to the next protection. The turban or the helmet. Exodus or Shemot 29:6. And shall put the turban on his head, and shall put a set apart signs. The dedication of the turban. Remember, the turban had this something written on it, and that something written means Kadashim la Yahweh, Kadashim Yahweh, Yahweh. That means set apart to Yahweh. That's what it meant, written down here on his head, on his turban. His turban had this written in gold, of course, and it was engraved in Hebrew, in Pele Hebrew. It says Kadashim la Yahweh, set apart to Yahweh. So all of us are supposed to be set apart for Yahweh. And the only way for us to do so is to understand the Torah itself. Let's look at what that meant. Book of Deuteronomy or Devarim 6:8. And you should bind them for a sign in your hand. You see that? That's the tefillin. Ephesians 6:17. And take the helmet of salvation. You see that? And take the helmet of salvation. Look at what the word in Devarim of Deuteronomy 6:8 says. You should bind them as a sign in your hand, and it should be as a frontals in your forehead. That's the tefillin. All these things that we do, we don't do them just for the heck of it. We know what we're doing. Look at what the word in Yeshayahu 59:7 said. For he put on the righteousness as an armor and as a helmet of salvation. You see that? As a helmet of salvation he put on his head. All the things that we do when we put the tefillin, when we put the tefillin on our arms, in our heads, we understand that Yahweh is like a red line, a call red line to Yahweh. We could call him anytime when we can do so through our prayers. When we connect ourselves in our minds, we connect ourselves, and it's something very amazing, because once you do that, you understand it, why we do that. And the only way we understand is searching the Torah, understanding the Torah, doing the Torah. Yeshayahu 59:17. Here I'm going to pause a little bit, and this pause is basically telling you, I was looking at this verse in the Hebrew, okay? I was looking at this word in the Hebrew. So let me look at this in the Hebrew, because this sounds very, very, very interesting, this verse in what it says here. But I always look at it in the Hebrew because it's very important. It reveals a lot of things. And if you notice earlier, if you notice Isaiah 59:7, it says the helmet of salvation. But the word salvation, it is written like this. Put the helmet of Yahushua. The helmet of Yahushua. The word Yahushua, that's what it means. The helmet of Yahushua, the helmet of salvation. Yeshua is our salvation. Remember that? Every little thing. Remember what we said earlier, that a lot of things, all the Tanakh was written about the Mashiach. Now we are looking at that everything was written about the Mashiach. Here we can look at that the helmet of salvation is the Mashiach. Yeshayahu or Isaiah 49:2. And he made my mouth like a sharp word. He hid me in the shadow of his hand. He put me a polished arrow. Why did I bring this? Is because we are bringing here the whole armor of Yahweh. Hosea or Hosea 6:5. So I have heard them by the prophets. I have slayed them by the word of my mouth. And the judgment have been as a light that goes forth. Here we can see the whole armor at work, which is the word of Yahweh. Hebrews 4:12. For the word of Yahweh is living and powerful, working, and sharper than any two-edged sword, and piercing as far as the division of both soul and ruach, spirit, and both joints and marrow and bones, and able to discern all thoughts and intentions of the heart. Yahweh's Torah does the same thing. We are looking up here the whole armor of Yahweh. The whole armor of Yahweh is the Torah itself that yields upon all of us. Now, Zechariah 4:6, then he said to me, this is the word of Yahweh to Zerubbabel, saying, not by my might, nor by power, but my Ruach, says Yahweh Sebaot. It only works by Yahweh's Ruach. Yahweh's Ruach is the power of Yahweh Sebaot. Hebrews 13:10, we have a mizbeach, or an altar, from which those who serve at the Mishkan have no right to eat. All this is very important. First of Peter, or Kepha 1:18, for you do not know that with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty ways of life you inherit from your forefathers. That's what Peter says. But with the precious blood of the Mashiach, the Lamb without blemish, he said, you see that? And without a spot. And he was known before the foundations of the world, you see that? For was revealed in the last times for your sake. Now we understand that the Mashiach is the one who does all these things. The Mashiach is the one who's basically making things, all these things happening. Without the Mashiach, there is no way we can make things happen. Without the Mashiach, we have no remissions of sin. And that's what it's all about. Now let's go into the menorah. I do want to talk a little bit about menorah, but menorah is the light that I didn't talk much about it in the last parasha, but here I'm going to get into a little bit about the menorah. The menorah was the 7 candlesticks. This menorah, if you notice, it looks almost as a tree. It's basically the tree of life. In another parasha, I'm going to bring a full detail, but I'm going to give it enough for us to understand what that means. Now, the menorah was specified in a certain specifications and measurements. All this is very important. The menorah needed to have this pure pressed oil. This pressed oil, as you can see it until today in Jerusalem, you can see how they press the oil. And it's pressed by huge stones that went around and then press the olives. And out of the olives, they press this oil and they make this, what is called the pure virgin oil, as you can see here. And this is what the Torah says, that this menorah needed to have this pure oil to go through in there. And I learned that the one of the fuels that lasts longer as far as everything is pure oil. And this is very important. As you can see how they go around and they press this oil and these olives, and now that's how the menorah needed to be light up. If you notice, the Kohen Gadol, or the high priest that is standing there, needed to have some kind of ladder so he can go up there. He couldn't go just, like kind of reach. He needed to have a stair so he can measure up to where the light is. Same thing with us. We need to scale another step into the ladder so we understand the Torah. All of us need to understand Torah. We need to climb another step into the ladder every year so we can understand the will of Yahweh. It's a must. We cannot just stay there. We cannot stay over there in the outside court. We need to go forward little by little. And this is, many people ask me, so where are we heading? The answer is we go into the Olam Haba, we go into the everlasting life. And until the Mashiach comes or until we die. So is basically two things. So all of us, we need to climb that. If you notice that the Kohen Gadol is basically lighting up the lamps. The lamps were in the menorah. But if you notice right in the middle, you see that the one in the middle needed to light up first. And then it went on the side and needed to light up one by one. But the middle one is called today, even the Jewish brothers, they call it the shamash. The shamash is called the servant in Hebrew. We know that the servant is the Mashiach here. We know that because we see it in the scriptures, we see it in the other parashats or Torah portions or teachings that we have give. And not only that, if you notice here, I'm going to bring it up. If you notice here that if you count from right or left, far right or far left, we count 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 is in the middle. We understand that the Mashiach came in the 4th millennium. So we understand here that the Mashiach came in the 4th millennium, in other words, aka the 1st century. The Mashiach came in the 4th millennium, so 4,000 years. And we almost close in the 6,000 years, so we understand almost 2,000 years ago, the Mashiach came the 4,000 millennium. So there is a lot of things encrypted in here, codified in the Torah. Now, we see that every single lamp in the menorah, remember there were 7 lamps, right, in the menorah. Every single lamp needed to have wicks. The wicks here, they were, as I mentioned on the last parasha, they were in the garments of the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol, if you remember how the Kohen Gadol had the garments, when they got old, the garments of the Kohen Gadol, then in the traditional writings, it says that when they got old, they didn't just throw it away. They used it, they reused it, they recycled it. It's a good thing to understand that we are supposed to recycle things. And they recycled these old garments, and they made what we are looking at here. They made the wicks. They made the wicks so they can light up the lamps on the menorah. So they didn't just throw it away, they reused it. They reused the little wicks so they can light up the menorah. Once again, the fire came from the burnt offering outside. They gather a little bit of one of the wicks. They gather the fire. Remember, the fire came from the Shemayim, from Yahweh. It wasn't any type of match or any matches. You go 99 cents and buy matches and light up. No, it was a pure fire. It was divine fire from Yahweh Sebaot. That fire needed to have there. And remember that we will see another parasha coming up very soon, and he talks about the 2 sons of Aharon that died because they burned at strange fire. I don't want to get into that because it's coming very soon, but just a hint to understand that the pure fire has to come from Yahweh and Yahweh only. Now, this, you see the wicks here that are used to light up the menorah. So here we can see a description of Ramban. Ramban happens to be a very ancient rabbi that he wrote, that he picked up this link, this description, how the Torah says that the Torah describes the menorah as being the tree of life. So if it's the tree of life, not the conventional round menorahs that you see here today, it wasn't like that before. It was an actual look-alike tree, the way you see it here. On the left side, you see the way he wrote it there, that it looks like a tree, the menorah. So you can see on the right side how we made it today, how the menorah is supposed to look. Now here we see that the menorah was a specific measurements here, and we see here that it has 7 branches or lamps, and it have 11 pomegranate, it had 22 cups, it had 9 flowers, and the hand width, according to Hebrew and Jewish writings, it says it is the hand width. The hand width was basically a hand width, another the measurement of hand, like this. So it was 17 hand measurements. So 17 hand measurements, as you can see here. Now, what does it mean, all this? Remember that every little thing that is in the Torah has its meaning. Once again, every little thing that is in this Torah has its meaning. Let's get into that. The 7 what we saw earlier in the 7 branches that we see here earlier was basically the 7 first words of Bereshit. Okay, the first 7 words of Bereshit. Now we see this, the next one, what we saw earlier, right? What we saw earlier, this 11 pomegranate. Now we see that are the 11 words of the first verse of Shemot or Exodus. And earlier we saw also that the menorah have 11 cups, right? So now we're going to see what the 11 cups meant. The 11 cups, it meant basically the 9 words of Leviticus, okay? And next one, the 17 flowers we saw earlier. I mean, the 17 flowers, we saw that 17 words of the book of Numbers, the first verse of chapter Numbers. And finally is the 22 letters of or words, I'm sorry, of Deuteronomy or Devarim, is basically a 22 hand width or hand measurements. So here we can see all the Torah itself, the whole Torah itself. It is, in other words, the Torah is the menorah. That's what is called the tree of life, the tree of life. And we can see there is more scriptural reference about this, but it's basically enough what we can give. I don't want to cover a lot of things because there's so much, and I mean, so little time. There is so much to cover, and believe me, there is another second part of this, but I think that's enough, and I don't want to get too much into your time. Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom. Once again, these are pre-recorded, but I will bring in next Shabbat a live conference, Yahweh willing. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Once again, thank you for being with us, and may Yahweh give you shalom to your life and to your family. Shabbat Shalom.
Beth Israel TV, canal 26.3, Los Ángeles, California, uniendo pueblos.